I was 15 when it happened. I told the truth. I reported it. I gave names. I gave details. I did everything a victim is told to do. But instead of justice, I got a diagnosis. The police said I was confused, that I was traumatized, that I imagined it. And then my own family backed them up. They said, she's always been dramatic. She makes up stories. She needs help. A week later, I was locked in a psychiatric facility. They told me I was hallucinating, that the assault never happened, that I made it all up. But it did happen. And the man who did it sat at our dinner table every Christmas. He hugged my mother. He called me sweetheart. He looked me in the eye and smirked. They protected him, and they silenced me. For 10 years, I lived with a lie they created and a truth no one wanted to hear. Until one day, a tech team recovered an old hard drive from our house's broken security system, and the footage was still there. Every word, every sound, every second they said never happened. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't unstable, I wasn't lying. And this time, I had proof. I didn't just come back for justice. I came back to make them all regret what they did to me. Subscribe for more stories like this because sometimes the crazy one is just the only one telling the truth. I never liked the way my uncle looked at me. Even when I was a little girl, maybe 8 or 9, I noticed it. The way his eyes lingered too long. The way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes when he said my name. But every time I mentioned it to my mom, she brushed it off with a tired laugh and told me I was being overly sensitive, that he was just friendly, playful, affectionate. That's the word she used most, affectionate. Looking back, I don't think she was naive. I think she just didn't want to know, not when knowing would mean doing something. My family wasn't wealthy, but they were proud, obsessed with reputation, image, and keeping things quiet. My dad worked in finance. My mom stayed home and ran a parenting blog filled with fake smiles and recipes she never actually cooked. Our house looked perfect on the outside, but on the inside, it was just secrets and silence. The man I called Uncle Sam wasn't blood-related. He married my mother's younger sister, who passed away years ago in a car accident. After that, he never really left the picture. He became family, helped my dad with taxes, brought wine to dinner parties, flirted with the neighbor moms. Everyone liked him. Everyone trusted him, which is probably why he felt invincible. I was 15 the night everything changed. It was early October, just getting cold enough for jackets and cinnamon candles. My parents were hosting one of their usual family nights, not an official holiday, but still a big deal in our house. Wine was flowing, the fireplace was on, and the adults were half drunk by 8 p.m. My cousins were over, playing loud video games in the living room, and I had retreated to my bedroom, headphones in, sketching in my journal like I always did. I remember feeling uneasy that night, though I couldn't explain why. The noise downstairs sounded different, thicker, like everyone was pretending harder than usual to have fun. Around 9:30, I realized I hadn't eaten dinner. My stomach was grumbling, and I thought maybe I could sneak downstairs, grab a sandwich, and run back up before anyone noticed. I put on my hoodie, tied it tight over my hair, and crept down the hallway. The kitchen lights were off, but I saw the faint glow from the living room. Everyone was still drinking and talking, but Sam wasn't there. That should have been the first sign. I opened the fridge and bent down to grab something when the door behind me slammed shut. Hard. I jumped and turned. Sam was standing there, alone. He smiled at me, the kind of smile that makes your blood run cold. I tried to step around him, but he moved fast, grabbed my arm and pushed me backwards, out of the kitchen and into the hallway. I tried to scream, but his hand clamped over my mouth. The guest room was closest. He dragged me in, locked the door behind us. Everything happened so fast and so slow at the same time. My body froze. My mind split. Part of me was screaming, thrashing, trying to fight back. But another part of me, the bigger part, just shut down. I couldn't process it. Couldn't even believe it was happening. I just remember the weight, his breath, the things he whispered. "If you tell anyone," he said, voice low and calm, like we were just having a conversation, "they'll never believe you. You're just a moody little girl who draws too much and cries all the time. You've always been a little off." Then he got up, straightened his shirt, fixed his belt, and walked out. Just like that. I lay there on the carpet, staring at the ceiling. My hoodie was torn. My legs were shaking. I couldn't cry. I couldn't move. I just kept staring at the tiny red light in the corner of the room, the old security camera my dad installed years ago but never took down. It had a blinking red dot. And I remember thinking, maybe someone would believe me. I don't know how I found the strength to get up, but somehow I did. I walked upstairs. My mom was sitting in bed, typing on her laptop, sipping wine. I told her everything, every word, every detail. She didn't even stop typing at first, just raised her eyebrows. When I finished, she closed her laptop and stared at me for a moment. Her face went blank. Then she said it. "Don't you ever say something like that again?" I was stunned. "But he locked the door, the camera." She cut me off. "You've always had trouble separating dreams from reality. I told your father it was getting worse. You've been acting strange for months." I couldn't breathe. I begged her to believe me. I told her to check the footage. I said we could call the police. I swore on everything. That's when she slapped me. Not hard, not brutal, but deliberate. Cold. A warning. "You want to destroy this family over a dream," she said. "Over a feeling." She told me to go to bed, that we'd deal with this in the morning. But we didn't. Because in the morning, my father took me to a doctor. Not a hospital, a private practice, a psychiatrist. He told me I had been having episodes, that I'd made accusations, that I needed to be evaluated. The man in the office never even asked what happened. He gave me a clipboard, asked me if I'd ever felt anxious, depressed, disoriented. 3 days later, I was committed to a private adolescent psychiatric facility. Diagnosis: acute delusional disorder with trauma-induced hallucinations. And that was how my story disappeared. Not because it wasn't true, but because someone or everyone decided it was easier to say I was crazy than to admit what really happened in that room. The walls in the psychiatric facility were always cold, not just physically, emotionally, spiritually, oppressively cold. The kind of cold that seeps into your bones and tells you you don't belong anywhere anymore. I was checked in on a Tuesday. There was no court order, no public record, no hearing. My parents signed a few forms, paid a deposit, and left me there like a suitcase. No hugs, no reassurances. Just my mom's voice in the hallway, telling the nurse she's been losing touch with reality for months. They didn't even pack me clothes. The place was called Willow Ridge Center for Adolescent Wellness, which sounded like a yoga retreat but was anything but. It was beige walls, cameras in every hallway, staff who smiled too wide and spoke too slow. It smelled like lemon disinfectant and paper towels soaked in tears. They took my phone. They took my journal. They took everything except the memory of what had happened. I tried to tell the intake nurse again what really happened. I told her about my uncle, about the room, about the camera. She nodded, wrote something down, and asked me if I had a history of fabricating events for attention. I stopped talking after that. In group therapy, the other girls spoke in circles. Some talked about voices in their heads. Others talked about pills that made them forget what day it was. I said nothing. I just sat, stared at the floor, and waited for anyone to realize I didn't belong here. But nobody did. I had weekly meetings with Dr. Halston, the facility psychiatrist. He wore thick glasses, always smelled like mint gum, and called me kiddo. He'd lean forward, hands clasped, and ask, "So, how are we feeling today about your uncle?" I'd stare back and say, "He raped me." He'd sigh, write something in his notebook, and say, "And we're still holding on to that version of events." That version? Like it was a creative writing assignment? Like it was a dream I stubbornly refused to wake up from? The meds came next. At first, they were mild stabilizers, then stronger stuff. They said I was having trouble sleeping, so they gave me sedatives. I'd wake up at 11 a.m. with a dry mouth and no memory of the night before. One time, I found scratch marks on my own arms. I didn't remember making them. After 3 months, I stopped asking questions. After 6, I stopped speaking. I became exactly what they said I was: withdrawn, emotionally unstable, resistant to treatment. The longer I stayed, the more I became their story. But deep down in the part of me they hadn't medicated to death, I knew I wasn't crazy, I wasn't broken, I wasn't hallucinating. I was buried. And not just by my parents. There was something else, something that didn't make sense. I overheard things in the hallways. A nurse once whispered to another staff member about what the family paid for. Another time, I saw a man in a suit, not a doctor, not a therapist, walking out of Dr. Halston's office. My father's company logo was on the briefcase he carried. That's when I realized this wasn't just about disbelief. This was about control, about keeping me quiet, about erasing me, legally, clinically, permanently. They hadn't just thrown me into a facility to help me, they were protecting someone, and I was the cost of that protection. The idea should have broken me, but it did something else. It kept me alive. For the first time in months, I had something to hold on to that was stronger than the drugs, stronger than the fog in my head. The truth? It was still inside me. And someday, I was going to find a way to prove it. The days at Willow Ridge bled into one another, like someone had taken a paintbrush soaked in beige and smeared it across a calendar. There were no weekends, no holidays, just breakfast trays at 7 a.m., group therapy at 10, recreational hour at 2, medication at 6, lights out by 9. It was a routine designed to dull the mind and erase the soul. For a while, it worked. I stopped asking what day it was. I stopped dreaming. I even started calling the staff by their first names, like everyone else did. But inside, I still counted days, weeks, months. And then came year 2. I was 16, still labeled as unstable, still medicated. But I'd learned how to play the game. I knew how to smile without showing teeth, how to nod without agreeing, how to say I'm working on my trust issues without spitting out the bitterness behind every word. That's when she arrived. Her name was Riley. She was new, 17. She walked in with a duffel bag full of sarcasm and a buzz cut that made her look like she didn't care what anyone thought. But I saw it in her eyes. That same flicker of quiet rage, the kind that doesn't come from mood swings or chemical imbalances, the kind that comes from being hurt and not believed. We didn't speak much at first, but one night, in the common room, she sat next to me during movie hour. The others were watching some forgettable PG comedy. She leaned over and whispered, "You're not actually crazy, are you?" I flinched. "A what?" She shrugged. "I saw your file. You think you were assaulted by a family member, but nobody believed you." I stared at her. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. You can't just, how did you see that? She smiled. I pick locks, and I read fast. I didn't know whether to be furious or grateful, but she didn't laugh. She didn't mock me. She just said, "It happened to me too. Except I never told anyone." "You did. That's brave." It was the first time in years someone looked at me without pity, fear, or disgust. She didn't ask if I was sure. She didn't question my memory. She just believed me. We started talking every night after that. When the lights went out, whispering in the dark like kids at a sleepover. She told me about her stepdad. I told her about my uncle. And slowly, something inside me began to shift. My voice stopped shaking. My hands stopped twitching. I remembered who I was before they told me I was broken. One night, I mentioned the camera, the old security system in our house. I told her about the red light, how it had been blinking when I lay on the floor after the assault. Her eyes narrowed. "Wait, your dad had cameras in the house?" "Yeah, he installed them when I was like 10, said it was for security." "And where was the footage stored?" I frowned. There was a central drive in his office. He had this weird obsession with tech stuff, always backing things up. Riley sat up straighter. "Then there's a chance it wasn't deleted." That thought hit me like a lightning bolt. For years, I'd assumed the footage was gone, erased, destroyed. But what if it wasn't? What if it had just been hidden, moved forgotten? "What if someone still has it?" she whispered. "And what if you could get it back?" That night, for the first time in years, I didn't cry myself to sleep. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. It wasn't a plan yet. It wasn't a strategy. It was just a seed. But it was growing. And Riley, the girl who walked in with nothing but a duffel bag and a buzz cut, had just watered it with a single sentence. The truth might still exist. And if it did, I was going to find it. Once Riley planted the idea that the footage might still exist, I couldn't think about anything else. Every group therapy session, every meal, every fake conversation with Dr. Halston, it all became background noise. I had a mission now, a direction, something that felt like movement after years of suffocating stillness. But we were still locked inside Willow Ridge. No phones, no internet, no visitors unless pre-approved, no access to anything beyond manicured gardens and pastel-colored therapy rooms. We couldn't even open windows without setting off alarms. So we started small. Riley had a talent for getting things she wasn't supposed to have. Hairpins, plastic utensils she sharpened into tools, even a nurse's access badge once, though she returned it before anyone noticed. She was careful, deliberate, and she never asked why I needed certain things, just helped me get them. I told her my dad was the one who set up the cameras. I remembered the model Redline security system, 2010 edition, because he bragged about how advanced it was. I remembered the screen in his home office, where he'd scroll through days of footage with a smug grin like he was some kind of secret agent. "He wouldn't have deleted it," I whispered to Riley one night. "He would have stored it, backed it up. He saved everything." "Then we need someone outside," she said, "someone who can dig." That's when we started watching the staff more closely. Not just how they acted, but what they had access to. Who had personal phones? Who left the building at which hours? Who was sloppy? Who was lonely? And we found her. Her name was Trina, a night nurse in her early 30s, single mom, overworked, always checking her phone when she thought no one was looking. Riley started chatting her up during med rounds, made her laugh, asked her about her kid, built trust. A week later, Riley slipped her a note with my name, my address, and 4 words, "Please search home footage." I didn't sleep that night. I imagined Trina opening the note and reporting us. I imagined solitary confinement, more medication, electroshock therapy, everything the movies warn you about, but nothing happened. And then 3 nights later, Trina lingered by my bed during rounds. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "You're not crazy," she said. I blinked. "What?" "I'm not saying I found it," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder. "But you're not crazy." Before I could respond, she was gone. That single sentence lit a fire in me that no sedative could put out. I knew what it meant. She had found something. She couldn't say more, but she didn't have to. Riley was elated. We whispered like conspirators every night, building what we'd do next, who we'd contact, how we'd get out once we had enough proof. But then something else happened. 3 days after Trina's visit, I was called into Dr. Halston's office. He didn't greet me with his usual minty smile. His hands were folded tightly, jaw tense. There was a thick file sitting on his desk, thicker than I'd ever seen. "I received a call from your father," he said. My stomach dropped. "He's increased your treatment budget significantly, effective immediately. You'll be moved to the East Wing." I frowned. "What's the East Wing?" "A more intensive therapeutic program for clients who are resistant to treatment." I swallowed hard. "I'm not resistant. I'm stable. You said so last week." Halston didn't flinch. "Your parents disagree." I knew what this was. They knew. Someone had tipped them off. Maybe Trina. Maybe someone else. Maybe my father's company flagged an IP address. Or maybe they just sensed the shift in me. Either way, they were tightening the leash. But they'd made a mistake. Because the more they tried to bury me, the more they exposed themselves. That night, I told Riley everything. Her face hardened as I spoke. "This isn't just about hiding what happened," she said. "They're paying to rewrite your entire life." And she was right. Later that week, while cleaning Dr. Halston's office, Riley found a torn invoice in the shred bin, half burned at the edges, but enough was readable. It showed payments, regular monthly transfers, from a private account under my father's name to Willow Ridge Psychiatric Management, labeled simply Compliance Fund. That was the first time I cried in months. Not because I was sad, but because I was right, sir. They hadn't just silenced me. They'd bought my silence, paid for it, monitored it. And now, I was going to make sure the whole world saw the receipt. After Riley found the shredded invoice, everything changed. The illusion shattered. I stopped second-guessing myself. I stopped wondering whether I had exaggerated, or imagined, or misremembered anything. The truth was simple and undeniable now my parents were paying to keep me locked up. Not because I was sick, but because I was inconvenient. And they weren't doing it alone. Willow Ridge wasn't a sanctuary for the mentally ill. It was a vault one that rich families used to store their secrets, padded with therapy buzzwords and designer medication. I wasn't a patient, I was evidence. But if they thought I'd stay quiet forever, they were wrong. The challenge was getting a message out without being caught. The facility monitored every letter, every call, every digital footprint. There were no email terminals, no public computers, and all visitors were carefully screened. But we had Trina. Or at least we hoped we still did. After she whispered, "You're not crazy," we hadn't heard another word. But the way the East Wing transfer happened so suddenly, so aggressively told us she'd found something real, something dangerous. Riley managed to sneak into the staff break room one afternoon, pretending to deliver laundry from the patient ward. She saw Trina in the corner, hunched over her phone, eyes darting nervously. She was still there, still reachable. That night, we slipped her another note. This time it was longer. We asked her to check one thing. Was the camera footage from October 12th, 2015, still recoverable? If yes, send one signal a red hair tie on her wrist at med rounds. 3 nights passed, nothing. Then on the 4th night, Trina walked into our ward with her usual cart of meds. She wore a red hair tie. My chest nearly exploded. After she finished her rounds, she lingered again at my bed, pretending to check my vitals. She didn't look me in the eye, but she whispered quickly under her breath. I sent it. I blinked. Sent it where? To someone who can help. Stay quiet. Do not ask more. Cameras are watching. Before I could ask anything else, she moved on. That night, I stared at the ceiling, completely still. But every nerve in my body was buzzing. She found it. The footage. She actually found it. And sent it somewhere to someone. The details were a blur, but it didn't matter. Something real had escaped the walls of Willow Ridge. The next few days were unbearable. I woke up every morning expecting to be drugged, restrained, thrown into solitary. I waited for guards to drag me away, for my father to appear with new paperwork declaring me dangerously unstable. But nothing happened. Except one thing. A new girl was admitted to our ward, 17, pale, soft-spoken. Her name was Natalie. The staff treated her strangely, too carefully, as if they were being watched. It wasn't until Riley and I caught Natalie glancing at us not with fear, but familiarity that we realized. She wasn't a patient. She was a plant. A messenger. Late one night, while pretending to be asleep, I heard the softest knock on the wall between our rooms. Riley tapped back. Then Natalie whispered through the vent. Trina couldn't stay. She's gone. What I whispered back. She got caught. The administration suspects she accessed private files. She quit before they could fire her. Did she get the footage out? Yes, Natalie said. She backed it up. 3 copies, 1 sent to a journalist, 1 to a lawyer, and 1 to a tech lab for authentication. I covered my mouth. This was it. Everything I endured, the betrayal, the diagnosis, the isolation, it was finally paying off. The truth had slipped through the cracks. Then Natalie said something that made my blood freeze. They're trying to spin it. Your parents are claiming the footage was doctored, that someone is trying to blackmail them. They filed a complaint against the journalist. Of course they had. But I didn't care. Because if they were panicking, it meant the footage was real. It meant someone outside these walls had finally seen what I'd lived through. For the first time in 10 years, I wasn't alone. And I wasn't just a girl in a facility anymore. I was a witness, a survivor, a threat. 2 weeks passed after Natalie's whisper through the wall. 2 weeks where I barely slept, barely ate, barely breathed. Every knock on the door made my heart race. Every time Dr. Halston called my name over the intercom, I thought, this is it. They're going to erase me again. But no one dragged me away. Instead, something else started to happen. The staff changed. Not completely, but enough for me to notice. They were quieter, tense, less smug. Gone were the fake smiles and condescending head tilts. Now, when they looked at me, there was something else in their eyes. Fear. Not because I was dangerous, but because they finally realized I wasn't powerless. One morning during breakfast, the TVs in the common room, usually set to cartoons or dull wellness ads, flashed to a local news broadcast. A female anchor, mid-30s, crisp suit, steady voice. We've obtained what appears to be unaltered security footage from a 2015 incident involving a teenage girl who was institutionalized for making sexual assault claims against a family member. The footage, authenticated by independent forensic analysts, shows the alleged assault and contradicts the medical diagnosis that led to her long-term commitment. I dropped my plastic spoon. The room went silent. Riley looked at me, eyes wide. She squeezed my hand under the table. And then came the name. Not mine, but my father's. Derek Langston, former VP of Redwood Financial Group and the girl's father, has not responded to multiple requests for comment. They didn't show my face. But they didn't need to, because people were talking, people were asking questions. The internet did what it always does: dig, dissect, amplify. Within 48 hours, the footage was everywhere. Reddit threads, Twitter clips, TikToks with captions like, "She told the truth, they locked her away." Hashtags trended, advocacy groups posted statements, journalists demanded interviews. But the real turning point came 2 days later, when a woman in a navy pantsuit walked into Willow Ridge with a briefcase in one hand and my name on her lips. Her name was Eva Moreno, civil rights attorney, trauma survivor, and apparently my new lawyer. "I saw the footage," she said, sitting across from me in the visitor room. "And I saw the medical report. I've read the invoices, the diagnoses, the silence. I've seen enough to know you didn't just survive something awful. You survived being buried alive." I didn't know what to say. I hadn't spoken to someone on the outside in years. She reached across the table and gently touched my hand. "Your story matters. But more importantly, it's not over. We're going to get you out of here. And when we do, we're going to make sure they never do this to another girl again." Tears blurred my vision. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time in a decade, someone was fighting for me, not against me. Eva explained the next steps. She had already filed a petition to challenge my institutionalization. The footage gave them cause. The invoices gave them motive. The national attention gave them pressure. All they needed now was my voice. Riley hugged me that night tighter than ever. "I told you," she whispered. "You were never crazy." And for the first time, I believed it. Not just logically, but deep in my bones. I wasn't delusional. I was betrayed. And now, they would all have to answer for it. The last time I was in a government building, I was 15 years old, wrapped in a pink hoodie with sleeves too long, sitting between my parents as they signed my name away. They said I was unstable, that I was imagining things, that they were doing what was best for me. 10 years later, I walked into a courthouse not as a patient, not as a diagnosis, but as a witness, as a survivor. As someone who finally had proof. Eva, my attorney, walked beside me, her voice calm, steady, "No matter what happens today." "Claire," she said, "you have already won. You exposed them. The world believes you now." I didn't answer. I was trying to keep my breathing even, to not collapse under the weight of what this moment meant. The courtroom was packed. Press in the backing, advocates and legal observers lined the sides. A few people I didn't recognize held signs that read things like "Justice for Claire" and "Believe survivors," not diagnoses. But my eyes went straight to the front row. My parents were there, my mother in a beige coat, lips pressed in a hard line, my father in a navy suit, hands folded tightly, avoiding eye contact, and next to them him. The relative I had accused when I was 15, the one they said I hallucinated. He sat calmly, eyes forward, like this was just another business meeting. I wanted to scream. but I didn't. Instead, I walked to the stand when the judge called my name. Please state your name for the record. Claire Marie Langston, I said, my voice steady. And why are we here today? Eva asked, standing beside me. I took a breath. Because 10 years ago, I told the truth, and I was locked away for it. I told the courtroom what I had told my parents, that I had been violated by someone in my family, that when I reported it, I was not believed I was institutionalized, that within days, psychiatrists labeled me delusional, despite inconsistent evaluations, that I was held in a private psychiatric facility, drugged, silenced, and ignored, not because I needed treatment, but because I was an embarrassment to powerful people. I paused, then added softly, and now there is proof. Eva presented the footage retrieved from the security system my father once bragged about. It didn't need audio. It didn't need editing. Just 37 seconds of grainy footage, time-stamped, uncut. A clear, silent rebuttal to everything that had ever been said about me. You could hear a pin drop in that courtroom. Then came the documents, years of monthly payments from my father to Willow Ridge's administration, labeled as compliance support, statements from former staff admitting pressure to maintain a diagnosis, an IT technician's sworn statement that he was instructed to delete backup drives shortly after the incident and that he secretly saved a copy. Eva closed her binder. That young girl was not hallucinating, she said. She was betrayed. The judge looked at me long and hard. Do you wish to add anything else, Ms. Langston? I nodded. I looked straight at my parents. You didn't protect me. You didn't even listen. You locked me away because it was easier than facing what really happened. But I remember. I always remembered. And now, so will everyone else. My mother's hands trembled in her lap. My father said nothing. The man beside them shifted in his seat for the first time that day. He looked uncertain. The judge cleared her throat. This court finds that the initial diagnosis and commitment were influenced by unethical outside interference, effective immediately. Claire Langston's record is to be cleared. Her commitment is nullified. She wasn't finished. I also refer this matter to the district attorney's office for potential charges related to obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, and conspiracy. She slammed the gavel once. The sound echoed like a thunderclap in my chest. It was over. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't emotional, but because the tears had already been cried years ago, in a locked room, beneath fluorescent lights, with no one to hear them. This time, the whole world had heard me. The first time I walked out of Willow Ridge, I didn't feel free. I felt disoriented. The world was louder, brighter, sharper. People rushed by on sidewalks like they hadn't spent a decade being told they were broken. I flinched at the sound of sirens. I turned away from reflective glass, still not used to seeing myself without a wristband or a locked door behind me. But then I looked up, and I saw a poster on a street pole. It was a hand-drawn sketch of a girl, head bowed, surrounded by headlines declared delusional. Footage reveals truth. 10 years buried. Someone had written, in bold marker, Claire, we believe you. I stood there for a long time, just breathing. That was 6 months ago. Since then, everything changed. The footage went viral. News anchors called it the most damning case of psychiatric weaponization in recent history. Politicians issued statements. Investigations were launched into Willow Ridge and facilities like it. A class action lawsuit was filed by other families whose loved ones had been similarly silenced. My parents, they lawyered up, but it was too late. Public opinion had turned. Financial records were leaked. My father's former company dropped him from their board. My mother was photographed crying outside their house. The man who hurt me was formally charged. And me? I got an apartment. A real one. Tiny, yes, but mine. I adopted a dog named Echo. I started therapy with a woman who didn't ask, "What's your diagnosis?" but instead said, "Tell me your story." I relearned how to eat when I was hungry. Not when a bell told me it was time. I slept with the window open. Because for once, I wasn't afraid of what waited in the dark. But most of all, I started writing. At first, it was just for me. Little notes, reflections, letters I never sent. Then one day, Eva handed me a microphone. Tell them what happened, in your words. I spoke at a survivor advocacy event. Then a podcast invited me. Then a documentary crew reached out. I thought I would break under the pressure, but I didn't. Because every time I told my story, another girl came up to me afterward whispering, crying, shaking, saying, "Me too." Some had been disbelieved, others misdiagnosed, some locked away for being inconvenient, others told their trauma was just a dream. I realized something terrifying and powerful. I was not the only one. So I did the only thing I knew how. I created something new. A foundation, a website, a hotline, a place where people who had been erased could speak again. We called it the Reclaim Project. Not just because we were reclaiming our stories, but because we were reclaiming our lives. One night, I stood in front of a college auditorium. The room was packed, students, parents, reporters, survivors. I told them everything. I spoke about betrayal, about silence, about how easy it was for the world to believe a diagnosis over a child's voice. I ended with this. They told me I was hallucinating. They told me I imagined what happened, but I didn't. And if you are someone who has been told the same, I'm here to tell you, you're not broken, you're not crazy, you're not alone. The room erupted into applause. But I wasn't seeking applause. I was seeking justice. And I had finally found it. Not in a courtroom, not in a headline, but in the eyes of every person who walked up to me afterward and said, "Because you spoke, I finally could too." If you're still watching, thank you. Thank you for giving Claire's voice a place to echo. And if you or someone you know has ever been silenced, disbelieved, or buried beneath shame, know this. The truth always finds a way. And justice sometimes takes time, but it comes. Please consider subscribing for more powerful true stories that deserve to be heard. Because someone out there right now needs to know they're not alone. Subscribe, share, speak up. This was Twisted Justice. See you next time.